Alrighty, welcome. We are at the beginning of CMU CS Academy, looking at, I think it's 1.1. I have noted here, 1.1.2. This is going to be our very first program. If you're new to this series and you didn't watch the introduction, I happily am making these videos to help you out. I understand that reading things can sometimes be difficult, and watching videos is helpful. I know that's how I learn, so I want that to be available for my students, and then why not the rest of you? That being said, I'm not giving answers to any checkpoints. I'm not giving answers to any exercises, but I hope to follow the same order as CMU's curriculum. I like the order that they choose to do things in, and I hope that watching it in a video can help you understand it better so you can go figure those checkpoints and exercises out on your own, as opposed to just kind of like, you know, freaking out and getting anxious and just like smacking the keyboard until something runs. So thank you, welcome, let's get started. This first thing over here is we're just going to be making a rectangle and exploring how the coordinates on our canvas works. So maybe one thing I should mention, whoops, let's get rid of that, is over here we've got our code on the left side over here. We've got our canvas on the right, which is where our program is going to run. And on the bottom here, we have a console and maybe an error message will pop up over here. That's the, the layout of this page. In our coding section, which maybe there's the editor, what we can do is write code that in Python that the program will follow and do things. First thing that we're going to learn how to do is how to make a rectangle. Now, there's a bunch of kind of magic stuff happening behind the scenes when you make this rectangle, but for now, it just makes a rectangle. It's our command that makes a rectangle. So here's how you write it. You're going to write RECT, capital rectangle, and then the way it goes is X, Y, width, and height. Now, I'm writing these in so you can understand what it takes, and let's talk a little bit about what I mean what it takes. So over here on line 1, I typed out rect to say I want to make a rectangle. Then in parentheses, anytime you call what's called a function or a constructor, even in this case, I think, it's going to need some sort of input. It might not actually need any input, but usually when you call a function, even if it needs no input, there's a place where input could go if I needed it. And that's what those little parentheses are there. In this case, a rectangle at a minimum requires as input an X and a Y coordinate. So it's saying for me to work, to be able to make my rectangle, you need to give me some information. That's the input. You need to give me an X coordinate and a Y coordinate so I know where to go. On top of that, a rectangle, you're going to need to tell me how wide you want me to be and how tall you want me to be. So it's a width and a height. And so what we'll do here is we are going to maybe put right at the center of the screen, so 200, 200, and we'll talk about the anatomy of the canvas in a moment. And let's make it like a 40 by 70 box. So it should be taller than it is wide right now because, again, it goes X, Y, width, and then height. Let's run our program, see what it looks like. So here's our rectangle. It got made in the screen. Now there's something important to notice here. I set it at the coordinates 200, 200. Notice that our rectangle's got 4 points to it. 200, 200 is the top left corner. Whenever you make a rectangle, that XY coordinate is going to be where the top left corner of your rectangle gets placed. This confuses a lot of students. They want it to kind of be in the middle, but that's not how it works. It's the top left corner, and then my width was 40, so I'm not going to say top left corner 200, 200, and then 240 for the width. I'm going to say width of 40. The X coordinate here was 200, so I go to the right 40 for that width of 40. 240 is that new X coordinate. And now here, before I freak you all out, is something worth explaining. We've got our coordinate grid here, and it has an XY, we have our canvas, and it uses XY coordinates to say where we're going to place things. Normally, you would think that maybe 0, 0 is the bottom left corner of the grid. Or maybe 0, 0 would be the center of the grid, which is what we often see in math or science and stuff like that. Because of history and the way that computers used to work and how they used to be text-based as opposed to graphics-based, we start our coordinates at 0, 0 in the top left corner of our canvas. Well, what does that mean? Well, as I move to the, so 0, 0 is all the way up here. So then down there, what am I going negative immediately? You're not. You start at 0, 0 on the top left. As you move to the right, the x increases, which is normal. We like our x's increasing as we move to the right. As I move to the left, they decrease. If I go negative in the x, it's off the side of the screen though. Here's the other part that really freaks out kids a lot at the beginning is when you're moving down in the y, as I'm moving down, the y coordinates are actually increasing. So that's why I have 200, 200. My height was 70, and when I go down over here, I see myself at 200, 270. The height is 70, started at 200, 200. I'm going to go down 70. Another little thing about this grid, and let me zoom in a little bit here and move my face over this way. A nice thing is if you notice in the bottom right corner of the grid, I'll try to zoom in on it. Bottom right corner of the grid, it shows you the current coordinates of your mouse. So if you're having trouble getting that, just like play around with it a little bit. Here, notice I'm at, if you can see, 7, 7. As I move to the right, my x is increasing. I move to the right a bit, I'm at 83. As I move down, the y increases. And I know that's weird, but that's just how it goes. Last thing to note about the grid, 0, 0 is the top left corner. 400 is our max size. So all the way to the right side of the screen is the x coordinate of 400. Can I go further to the right? No, it looks like 399 is the furthest I can get my mouse to go. The bottom of the screen is also 400. So I got 0, 0 up here, 400, 0 in the top left corner here, 0, 400 in the bottom left corner there, and 400, 400 in the bottom right corner there because I went all the way to the right, 400 to the right, and 400 down there. It freaks out a lot of people, but once you start getting your coordinates down, you're just like, okay, yeah, I know it's backwards. Sometimes you'll mess up a negative sign, or you'll, start by making the y smaller and it goes up, and you're like, oops, I've messed that up. You get used to it eventually. The only way I can really recommend getting good at it is just by doing as many of the first exercises as you can, getting through the checkpoints, and just playing around with it a little bit, right? Our rectangle, like we said, it follows that XY coordinates. So I want to move this same rectangle down. Well, to move it down, I'm going to have to change not the X, but the Y. Not changing the width or height to move it down. I just want to move it down. So we'll change the Y. So maybe if I want to move it down, don't forget to go down, the Y's are increasing. So let's maybe put this at 250. And now, well, it went down a little bit. Maybe I'll put it at like 350 and you can really see, or 380, and you can really see when I run it, it goes down pretty far, right? Because it's the top left corner, it moves down pretty far. If I want to move this back up, maybe we'll put it all the way at 100 as the right again, X, Y, width, and then height. And now, boop, it's going to be back all the way up there. So that's your rectangles, that's your coordinate grid. Is there anything else that I want to talk about over here? I mean, I guess so. Again, let's just go through the rectangles again. X, Y, maybe I want to write in a little comment here. Rectangles go X, Y, width, and height. By the way, if you put a little hashtag and it turns green, that's what's called a comment. And it's just like a note for yourself. It won't change what your program does. It's not going to affect or run any of this. It's just a note for yourself so you can remember things. So I'm writing a little note for myself to say, rectangles are made by putting the X coordinate, then the Y coordinate, then the width, and then the height. So let's play around with it a little bit more, right? Just kind of like messing around. So here I have the X and the Y at 200, 100. If I want to make this wider, well, I change the width one. So maybe I'll change it to like, let's go crazy. Let's go 300 in the width. And if I run it now, boom, it's going all the way off the edge of the screen. And notice I can't even grab onto that corner on the right side there because it's off the screen. Because I started at 200, I made my width 300, so it's going to start at 200 and then go 300 to the right, ending all the way up at 500, which is off my screen. Let's maybe fix this back. Let's make this back to, it was 40 before, I'll make it 50. Let's make it really tall. Well, I'll maybe double its height, make it 170, more than double its height. And I run it now. I brought the width back smaller, but I made it taller, so now it's taller. If I want to move it to the left, maybe I'll put this at 50 over here. So my rectangle, I'm making 50. And all I'm doing is just playing around, right? The best way to understand this and to get it is just to play around, move them around, do those exercises. They force you to, draw a bunch of things. Last thing I'll say here, I was going to talk about errors, but I'll make a separate video about that. Last thing I was going to say here was you can always make another rectangle, right? Maybe I'll make a new rectangle at, let's try 300, 300. So think about that. 300, 300 is going to go all the way to the right and then down a lot because 0's at the top, 400's at the bottom. So this should be in the bottom right corner. And let's make it a little box. To make it a box, I'll make the two sizes, the width and the height, the exact same size. And when I run this now, well, we've got a box, top left corner at 300, 300. And the width is 30, so it's going to go to the right 30. The height is 30, so it'll go down 30. And now we got our little box. I think that's enough to start it out. There's I can give more and more examples, but really the best thing for you to do is just to play around by putting in your rectangle command a couple times. Try the exercises. Draw the couple things that they've got there for the exercises. And just the two big takeaways from this are rectangle goes X, Y, width, height, and that your coordinates start at 0, 0 on the top left corner, going from the X's work as you'd expect them to, from left to right. They get bigger, going from left to right, going towards the right, the X's get bigger, going towards the left, they get smaller. And then the Y's, the weird part is they get bigger when they're going down and they get smaller when they're going up. But you'll get used to it and it'll be all right. There it is. See you next time. Hope you got some knowledge out of this, Hope this helped a little bit.